On today's Transport Evolved, the Mercedes-Benz B-Class ED finally gets its official EPA ratings. Tesla Motors gives the Tesla Museum a really awesome birthday present for Nikola Tesla's birthday, and a Nissan LEAF that you will never, ever, ever have to clean. These stories and more coming up next on Transport Evolved. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode number 207 of Transport Evolved, recorded on Friday, the 11th of July 2014. My name is Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield. I am feeling fuzzy today. Everybody's on holiday. I learnt, apparently, July is the normal holiday month for everyone in the US, and in the UK it's August. So I was wondering why no one was able to join me for the show, and they're all off having fun and holiday. But I found a guest who isn't off on holiday having fun. At least I don't think he is. Please welcome back to the show, and he hasn't been on for a year, Joe Dugandzic. How are you, Joe?
I'm great.
Phoenix, Arizona. What's the weather like in Phoenix today?
I'd have to look it up. It's, I don't know what it is in Celsius. It's probably about 85 at this point because, it's only 9 o'clock in the morning here. So
that's not too bad, to be honest. Must be said.
No, it's better than 115.
So you're a Nissan LEAF driver. Tell us what you've been up to lately, and I'm going to try and fix your shot. For those who don't know, we had a technical problem before the start of the show, and we had to reboot. And now your shot's vanished. So you tell us what we're doing, and I'm afraid people are going to see the back of my head for a bit while I line your shot back up.
Well, anyways, let's see. I got a 2013 Nissan LEAF SL. I think the SL is the top of the line last year in March, and this tells you how few miles I actually drive, because it literally just clicked over to 10,000 miles 3 days ago. So I tell people all the time, I mean, besides the fact that it's an electric car, it is the best car I've ever owned. So for its birthday, so to speak, back in March, I actually took it on a long-range trip and experienced some challenges, not with range anxiety, but simply with rapid charge stations that reported themselves to be online when actually they were not.
Do you know, I had that same problem. I don't know if you heard. I had that same problem in continental Europe earlier this year, actually.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that strange? So were these ones that were set up by Nissan, or were they other ones?
No, these were it's sort of a strange combination. There's one of the big charging companies is called ChargePoint, and then they allow people to, I think, private label their own chargers if they want to get into the game. So there's another smaller company called Go E3, and they have a couple chargers. They have a handful of chargers around the state, but there's one down on the I-10 at Picacho Peak, and it reported itself as I don't know why people are texting me. Anyways, it reported itself online, but people had complained about it on PlugShare, and so I had called them in advance just saying, "Are you sure it's online? Is everything okay?" They said, "Yes, no problem." And then the problems that had been reported cropped up. So I wasn't stuck permanently, but I wound up on level 2, kind of a very poor level 2 charger instead of the quick charge. So instead of being there for 20 minutes, I was there for 2 hours.
Do you know what, Joe? This is a common problem, isn't it, for LEAF owners? And I think any EV drivers, apart from Tesla owners, I think that they're the ones that seem to be
they seem to be immune from it. I don't yell at the people on the phone because I know that they're just the customer service people, but I say, please let your upper management know you have got to solve these issues, because it's a brand new industry. This technology is not, battery charging technology, these charging stations are not that advanced. They're basically power converters. And if they don't solve these issues, you're never going to really get wide adoption, because everyone is going to hear about these things and not want to deal with these problems.
Right.
So I run into them around Phoenix. Blink, which just got purchased by
the car charging group,
charging group late last year, I think it was. They admit they are months behind schedule on fixing charging stations, and there are several around that it actually doesn't really affect me because there's usually many in a location, but there's some that have just been broken and dead for months, and I call them and they're like, yeah, we'll get around to it.
On the blink,
literally on the blink. You're absolutely right.
And it's such a frustration. I mean, that's why Transport Evolved didn't get to cover the Wave Rally, and a lot of people criticised us for kind of chickening out and turning around and going back. We had one other well-known YouTuber who openly basically called me some pretty nasty names for not being prepared enough and heading out on this trip with appropriate preparedness. But actually we'd done over a month's worth of planning in advance. We double checked, triple checked everything, and on one occasion
recently, wasn't it?
Because on one occasion
I was watching your show from a few weeks back.
On one occasion they even said they rang up and was told, yes, it's working, and when we arrived the somebody else on the same at the same location went, no, this has been broken for 3 weeks. I don't know why they told you it was working. So it's a common problem. The other thing I want to talk to you about briefly before we go into the kind of the meat of the show is the Nissan LEAF battery purchase scheme. Now, obviously, being in Phoenix, Arizona, you're part of the very few people who will expect to lose a LEAF capacity bar very early on in the LEAF's life. In fact, I would assume that you've already lost one, or you're getting close to.
I have not actually, and I'm surprised. I think, and other people can correct me because there's been a lot of information out there. I mean, I keep up with this industry and the news on a regular basis, much like you do, except I don't have my own show. But anyways, I have a show on a different topic. But anyhow, I think that they had changed slightly, at least, the battery chemistry for the 2013 model, if I'm not mistaken, and I have yet to see a drop in one of the capacity bars. Granted, I haven't used it all that often in terms of just collect over to 10,000 miles. It's usually either in a garage, so it's never. I try to avoid the usual things. Don't charge it at noon at 107 degrees, and don't rapid charge it at that point. So I tried to be careful with it. It's on a lease, obviously, so it's going to go back at the end of its lease term. But during the time, I don't want to lose it. And I have a sort of a special case because I live in an apartment complex, and to make a long story short, I lived in a different one last year, and I had worked with them to install chargers. They got them installed. Then they decided separately to raise everyone's rent by an exorbitant amount. So then I had to move, and I wound up moving closer to work and didn't have charging stations. So I'm trying to solve that this year because it really, when you don't have the ability to charge at home, I have really realized that it's possible to do, but it's really just a pain and it's inconvenient.
And that's actually something that Plug in America and a couple of other organisations have been working on very closely in California with authorities on. So hopefully it will move itself southwest towards you guys in Arizona. With regard to the LEAF battery replacement program, obviously for the last year or so, you've been able to rent a LEAF battery pack if your original battery pack has died. But now you can actually buy one outright.
It was like what, 5,000 or 6,000 after their little,
I think it was after
the trade-in value or something.
So I mean, and that's fantastic. And the new battery packs will be what they call the lizard packs as well, which will be obviously more heat resistant. I think to say heat resistant is probably a misnomer. So more heat resistant. So
is there any word out of Nissan that the next generation LEAF will actually have some sort of active cooling system, or are they just sticking with it's going to be passively cooled?
Well, that was very interesting because I've just got back from a couple of months ago. I went to Spain to drive the ENV200, which does have a little air conditioner sitting at the front of the battery pack, and Nissan didn't want to talk about it, but I reckon that's what we're going to get in the next generation LEAF. It's purely hearsay.
Yeah, my friends have the Ford Focus Electric, and they have the active cooling. So we're always comparing notes, and they don't charge to 80 or 100%. They just charge and they're done. They don't make those decisions. So it's always talking about our different experiences.
Yeah. All right. Well, talking about experiences and friends with EV, someone in the chat room was just saying that their neighbours just bought an Outlander plug-in hybrid, and there's very good reason to change to an electric or a future tech car. I mean, Transport Evolved is about more than just electrics. I know we do talk about electrics an awful lot, but we do talk about other future transportation solutions as well. And there is a good reason to make your switch, because apparently, according to BP, there is only 53.5 years of oil left. Now, this is a higher figure than the previous forecast from BP, partly due to the rise in available oil that BP thinks it can get out of shale. But given the absolutely unknown environmental side effects of shale fracking, I've seen some of the documentaries that have come out of the US talking about people whose water wells will catch fire.
It's pretty bad
from the chemicals in the water. People who've been sick, animals who've died, crops who've failed. And certain states, obviously, fracking is allowed, in certain states it's not. And here in the UK, our government's really gone very pro fracking. The leader of the Green Party was arrested for protesting against a fracking, and she wasn't convicted, but it's a very touchy subject, and frankly, I don't like the idea of fracking, and I don't like the idea of us digging just to make our oil reserves, make them a little bit more. So I think, it's a stark warning. My children are 10 and 11, and that means in their lifetime, if we continue to consume oil, this will happen. And I think the thing we need to also remember is oil isn't just for petrol or diesel. Oil is used to make plastics.
Everything.
Oil is used to make you're right, everything. Oil's in our clothes, oil's in our food containers, oil's in parts for cars, whether they're electric or not. And we need that oil for other things, not just for burning, right?
But I think, and if I may be wrong, but I don't think so. I think that probably the number is probably close to, say, 70 to 80% of all of the oil that we extract out of the planet goes really to gasoline production and diesel, towards transportation. And what I don't understand, I actually just came up with this 30 seconds ago, is, okay, so the oil companies are tremendously profitable. They're extremely wealthy. They have all this profit and so forth. And it doesn't really matter, because I have launched my own businesses in the past. I understand business and profit and so forth. So these business people, at the end of the day, I don't think really care what they're investing in, as long as they're going to make money at it. That's a whole different, story in terms of people making too much money. So why is it that they don't take the money and say, all right, we know the oil's going to, by the time we get to the end of oil, no one's going to be able to afford it. It'll be too expensive. So I don't understand why that they haven't said, let's simply go invest our additional profits, or some percentage, and say, let's boost the other industries that then they can be major stakeholders or owners in. Solar, wind, battery technology, car manufacturing. I don't. There must be something else that they simply wish to continue running out their existing game. I mean, years ago, there was tremendous investment by the oil companies in hydrogen, which I think they still are doing, but it's probably some tiny little portion of. So there's got to be something else that's stopping them from doing this, because I'm like, why don't you just switch business models? Doesn't matter, you'll still make money. I don't get it.
If you're the leader of if you've invested all of your time and money and energy in one thing, and I know you've said obviously they are working on other solutions, but I think part of it is just an unwillingness, and Mark, very often blames the baby boomers, and I sort of tell him off for that. But there is kind of that baby boomer mentality of, we're fine. The planet's going to be fine the way we've used it. Right. We're good. You guys, the Gen Xers, the Gen Ys, you've got, and the millennials, you've got to solve this problem. And I think because our population is a growing elderly population, because we have got a financial crisis, a global financial crisis on our hands as our populations get older, and we just haven't figured out how we're going to look after everybody. A lot of people just either can't afford to or can't be bothered to because they're doing other things. And I think there's also fear, you know.
And I agree, and I know I won't go into the topic heavily because I could talk about it for forever. I know you were saying Transport Evolved is more than just about cars and whatnot. There's a technology on the transit side called Personal Rapid Transit, specifically named SkyTran. They have been making leaps and bounds from their original concept, which was created 25 years ago, to recently, over the past about 2 weeks, they just finally announced that their full-scale working prototype system will be built at Israeli Aerospace over there in Israel, finally, so that it will actually be seen, because many governments and cities across the world are interested in putting it in, because basically it's a high-speed personal transit system of these Jetson-like pods that are up in the air. So we're actually going to see that working and operational for the first time by the end of next year, and that's tremendously exciting. And that could actually displace the traditional auto, even with gasoline vehicles, because people don't want to get out of their cars because they can get in a car and go nonstop to their destination. That's the biggest challenge of fixing that problem.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
I think we're in. I mean, we talk about multimodal transport quite a lot here on the show.
Sure.
And I think that's something that, you know, moving forwards, we're going to have to do a little bit more of as well. So, you know, like the BMW i3, where you can drive from one place to a train station, then get on your train, and then when you're at the other end, you've got a hire vehicle of some description, hopefully electric. And that would work, obviously, for you guys down in Phoenix, right?
Yeah. Phoenix. Phoenix is so ripe for a lot of unique transportation options, and they're just sort of going on the old rules, unfortunately.
And I think the other thing that people don't understand, I mean, this is something that as a Brit, I have real trouble understanding. Phoenix is massive, isn't it?
It is massive.
I mean,
almost 4 million people, I think, in the metro area.
But I mean, the actual physical landmass that is Phoenix.
Yes, massive.
And some of the, you know, neighboring cities and towns as well. It sprawls out for miles and miles and miles and miles. And as a consequence, Arizona is very much a car-centric culture, right? I mean,
it is.
You don't, for other reasons as well. I mean, you don't want to walk and cycle when it's 110 degrees out.
You do not.
But you know, Arizona would be kind of a great testbed for any new kind of renewable mass transit or personal transit system. And you can imagine the amount of solar energy that falls on Arizona in one day.
I'm going to be launching my own campaign probably through an Ignite presentation in the fall to really push for SkyTran here, because it's already laid out as a grid. Phoenix is basically a gigantic street grid. The entire metro area is based on that. So it's ripe for some sort of brand new technology to help us move around.
Yeah.
That's what is needed.
All right, well, let's move on to our next news story. The Ford F-150 pickup truck. Lots of those in Phoenix, right?
Plenty.
Big following all across the US. The F-150, year after year after year, is essentially the number one light-selling, light-duty vehicle. And it's classed as a light-duty. I know that's difficult, again, for us Europeans to think of, because the F-150 is big.
It's huge.
And obviously in the US, it is now the smallest pickup truck that Ford makes. Ford used to make a smaller pickup truck and nobody bought it.
Well, they had the Ranger that did pretty well.
Yeah, the Ranger. The Ranger is still made over in Europe. They're still making it.
Wow. Okay.
But it's not made in the US anymore. The F-150 obviously is very, very popular. It's also the most American vehicle you can make by percent volume of American sourced and made parts. But soon, when Tesla opens its Gigafactory, and obviously Arizona is one of the potential sites for that, the Tesla Model S will be the most American vehicle you can buy by the parts sourced. It's currently about 55% North American, so Canada and America, but it will soon be much, much more homegrown, as it were, because a lot of the batteries, all the components of the batteries, etc., they will all be made in the US and built in the US, which obviously has a dramatic effect on the car's carbon footprint during manufacture. And let's not forget, making a vehicle uses an awful lot of energy. It's one of the reasons why BMW focused very hard on its carbon fiber reinforced plastics. It's one of the reasons why Nissan this week made a huge song and dance about the fact that 25% of all Nissan Leafs are recycled. The components are recycled from other materials. And obviously, that will mean that the Tesla, the namby-pamby, poncy, environmentalist vehicle, as our friends who like rolling coal are probably going to say, but not in a British accent, they'd probably say things much worse than that, wouldn't they?
Right. Well, we do want the giga factory. I can't talk this morning. Here in the Phoenix area, and I know that I think the governor or the legislature had been flipping their stance on Tesla, directly selling here in the state to push to get the factory here, because how many states it was like they had announced 6 or 7 locations that were potential sites.
They were looking at several different ones, yeah.
Yeah, and they had announced what was it, about a couple of weeks ago, that there was going to be a second gigafactory,
or a third, or a fourth. Yeah,
I mean, who knows, right?
Tesla's increasing it, but I think the thing now is it looks like California, right? My money's back on California. California wasn't in the original running. It was Arizona. It was, and I think it was Mesa, Arizona, wasn't it? That's what they were looking at. Yeah. And then it was somewhere in Texas, somewhere in New Mexico, and the other state wasn't
Colorado, was it?
No. I can't.
I thought it was somewhere else in the Southwest.
It was somewhere else in the Southwest, and now I can't for the life of me think. Wasn't Utah?
I mean, in a sense, it would make sense to have it in California, because then you don't have the cost of moving the batteries around. You're going to make them over here, they're going to ship them over here.
That was the
Nevada.
State.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So I mean, it would make sense to keep everything more central, but then obviously it's great to add jobs to other metro areas. So
yeah,
we'll see. When I thought that they said they were going to announce the location in July, but I also heard it wasn't going to be till the end of this year.
They've moved it back now. Joe, just so that you know, your video's frozen. We're not sure why, but we've got a static video picture of you, or a static picture of you, which looks a little bit pixelated for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
But we're going to carry on with the stories. I'll let you have a play. If you drop off, we can call you back. The all-electric Nissan LEAF, 2015 model year Nissan LEAF, was refreshed this week, or at least given some price changes. Interestingly, very few features. Hey, you're back. Very few features have been added. There are 2 things that are noticeable on the base model, or the base spec of each. So you've got the S, the SV, and the SL. The S trim level, the base entry level, now has Bluetooth, which is good. It also now has the B engine mode braking simulation, so it gives you more regenerative braking when you lift off the accelerator, which I like. And it allows for almost single foot braking as well, or single pedal driving in most situations. You still do have to press the brake pedal and cover the brake pedal, obviously, to be a responsible driver. Also, the 2 top end models, so the SV and the SL, add Bluetooth hands-free texting assistant on the base model price. In terms of price, the base model's gone up by $30. And I can't remember the price off the top of my head. I think it was $29,000 and $10. I think it was $29,000 to $10. The mid-range one, interestingly, if you buy one of the early 2015s, you get last year's wheels, so it's the same, $32,000. There's no change in price. If you go for a slightly newer one, it goes from the 16-inch to the 17-inch alloy wheels, and then you have to pay $100 more compared to last year's price, so $32,100. And the top-end model, the $35,000 one, is $100 more than it was last year. But this is the interesting thing. Very few other changes. One new paint. They've swapped out the ocean blue for a different shade of blue that doesn't really look much different. But the charging package has gone up in price by $500, and the premium package has gone up in price by $500. Why did Nissan do that, Joe?
Costs are going up.
Well, it just feels like Nissan was really sneaky, Because the charging package, so the charging package allows the base model Leaf owner, which the base model Leaf comes with just a 3.3 onboard charger, 3.3 kilowatt onboard charger, and no rapid charging. The charger package for the base model owner allows you to upgrade to CHAdeMO quick charging and 6 kilowatt charging. On the mid-range, it allows you to upgrade to 6 kilowatt charging, and it just feels like Nissan's gone, well, we're just going to charge you extra for having a faster charging capability.
It really $500
doesn't feel right.
I don't know what the cost of these components are. Obviously, Nissan knows this. That they have all this down to a science. But I think that I personally would actually say if Nissan wanted to do something bold, they would include the CHAdeMO. However, I may be pronouncing that incorrectly. Basically, the rapid charging and the 6.6 kilowatt across all trim levels as standard equipment. Because really, I think you're creating multiple classes of drivers by saying, well, you have to pay more to have the convenience that you're supposed to have by being able to charge quickly. Because there are some people who are stuck perhaps with just trickle charging at night, which I did for about 4 months. And it's okay if you have that time and you're not going anywhere, you plan your life around charging, but that's not the way to be. People don't plan their lives with gas vehicles around stopping up and filling up at the gas station. That's silly. So I don't think realistically it's a way to go with EVs. And Tesla doesn't do it. You're just paying for range. They don't.
Right.
Tesla does not have a slow version of the supercharger.
Although with the 60 kilowatt hour models, they're ready for the supercharger. You just have to pay extra to get a software switch modified. That's what I understand it to be, anyway. But you're quite right.
What's that cost? I wonder. On the Tesla, who knows?
I don't know, but I think you're right. I mean, it does kind of suck a bit. And the other thing that's been pushed up by $500 is the premium package, which includes the Bose music system and the surround sound monitors. Now, I've ridden in a Leaf with the Bose sound system, and I must say it doesn't feel as good as the Bose sound system in the Chevy Volt. We've got a Chevy Volt, and I really like the sound in that car. The Nissan LEAF that I had on review with the Bose sound system doesn't seem as well put together as the one in the Volt, but it might be because the Volt has slightly different sound deadening. So maybe that's what it is.
Each of them it's up to the engineering of it is based on all the acoustics and the actual design of the interior. I think it's adequate. I mean, unless you really spend a tremendous amount of money for an audio system that's perfectly tailored, I don't know. I think for what it is, and for we could call it an economy car because obviously it's wonderful for the environment and it's an EV. My old boss used to joke about that in his Prius. But at the end of the day, I think it's a very adequate sound system. I don't see why they're increasing the price of the top of the line package is already priced fairly high, and I don't know if they're just trying to make up for money lost somewhere else. But I think that's kind of silly. I think the other thing, I tell people this all the time, the Leaf is a great car, by itself. It being an EV is even better. It is the most fantastic car I've ever had. But the around view monitor system, I use that so often, and it is the best. I mean, I play this game of how perfectly can I park in a spot. It's in every time I'm pulling into a parking spot. That's, I think, a killer feature of that high-end package.
I must say, I do like the around view monitor, but I think I would be struggling to pay $500 extra to justify that.
Well, to justify, yeah.
I only
did it because they only had certain packages and certain models available. They had like 3 when I was going to ultimately get mine a few months ago. So I said, well, okay, fine.
All right, let's move on to the last story of our segment. And it's a sad story. We kind of touched on it last week. I don't want to be part of this media circus that surrounds it. As we reported last Friday, there was a massive crash on the 4th of July in the wee small hours in LA, in which a joy-ridden Tesla Model S that was stolen from a service centre went on a wild chase around town, destroyed a couple of police cars, hit huge numbers of cars and damaged them in the process, ended up colliding very quickly with a car. I mean, they were traveling at 3 figures, so sort of 100 miles an hour plus. Hit I believe it was a Honda. It then sort of went into the air, caught on a lamp post. The car split in two. The battery pack, obviously at that point, having been really, really structurally damaged and punctured, short-circuited and caught fire. The fire for sort of first responders were able to put it out, and there were people injured in that accident. We just heard today that the driver of that stolen Tesla Model S has died. And then on the same day in the evening, a Tesla Model S being driven somewhere else in California rear-ended a Toyota with 5 passengers, 3 children, 2 adults. 2 of the children and 1 of the adults died at the scene. And it's kind of left this very big media circus surrounding Tesla safety. As we've said on the show before, Tesla safety is still very, very, very high. It's as high, if not higher, than any other car on the market today. And when you go out in a car, you are playing a game of statistics. Statistically, it is impossible to expect a car manufacturer to have 0 fatalities. And I know it's something that Tesla's very keen on achieving. I know it's something Volvo is very keen of achieving. Volvo's got this whole Vision 2020 concept: 0 fatalities, 0 injuries, 0 pollution. And I know that Tesla obviously shares that vision. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I did write a post this week, and it was based on a conversation Michael and I had on the show last week, in which we said, look, Tesla is in a very unique position. Tesla has the ability to update its car's software remotely. They can do lots of things to make their cars more safe remotely without even, calling the cars in. I know that this will be weighing heavily on Elon Musk's mind. I know that he will have. I hope that he will have prepared for this day. I hope that he accepts that a fatality at some point is inevitable in any car at this point in our modern world, because we don't have all the other cars on the road don't have the same safety features. All of the other cars have to be taken into consideration. They're not all built in the same way. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy. As I said last week, my heart goes out to the families of those who have died in these tragic accidents, regardless of who they were and which car they were driving. Just because someone had stolen a car and was driving it recklessly does not, in my opinion, mean that they should be deserve death. And human life is to be preserved in every situation, I think. So it's a very sad thing. Joe, what do you think is going to happen as a consequence of the fallout of this?
I don't know. Everyone, like you said, the eyes are on Tesla because they've had such a fantastic safety record. And my opinion on it is that it's similar to yours, in that there's no way and there's no reason realistically why manufacturers can guarantee an absolutely perfect safety record under any circumstances. The only way we could get there at some point in the future, if everything was perfect and all things were equal, is if every vehicle out there was autonomous. It was a advanced Google or whatever other company's going to come around beyond it, self-driving vehicle, because the human factor is the cause of accidents. I mean, sure, the weather and there's other factors around the world depending on your locale, but in general, it's human caused, and there's no way to guarantee. There's no reason. They have to make it within a reasonable amount of safety, which I think Tesla has done a great job of doing. People talked about it, months ago, or whenever that previous fire happened, which didn't cause someone to die, from what I recall, at least. People are focused on Tesla because Tesla is in the news, and they're being looked at as one of the future models of this industry, and it's Elon Musk, it's Tesla, and it's SpaceX, and it's all these other launches. So it is very sad, and I think Tesla is going to just have to move forward and just say, look, this was the situation, and ultimately they can't be in control
Right.
exactly what happens to their vehicles when they're driven.
All right, and I think it's worth saying that obviously we know that if there is something that's found to be wrong, Tesla will work with the authorities to fix it. Like any other automaker, Tesla. We're not asking for Tesla to get special treatment. It's this is a normal process. Just because Tesla happens to be high profile and so different in the way it does things, that it's getting all this attention. Your video has yet again frozen, Joe, and I'm going to have a little break now. I've got the start of a cold. So please forgive me if I sneeze. I think I might do very presently. If you watch the show live, please do consider donating to our site. The costs of running Transport Evolved do kind of pile up over the month. I think we had we would sort of keep us heads above water, but it would be nice to take home something at the end of the day for all our hard work. So if you'd like to support us and what we do, head to www.transportevolve.com and follow the link there. You can make a one-off donation to help us in the show, and you can also make a pledge to have a monthly subscription. There's 3 levels. There's level 1, level 2, and level 3. Okay. Figured out what we did there, which is obviously the 3 different levels of car charging. And anything you can give will be greatly appreciated. If you can't afford to donate, and that's okay, just spread the word. Tell everyone about what we do and how we work. And be sure to visit or click on one of the ads on our site. We did have a couple of people this week say, you've got too many ads on your site. We are trying to make a living. This is my job. This is the only job I have. So there we go. So anything you can give will be greatly appreciated. Right, on to the second section here of the show today. And Joe, there's been lots of cars, lots of new regular car news this week, which we've interspersed in the show. But the next piece of news is about a car that is anything but regular. It's the Rimac Concept 1, 811 kilowatts of power. 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. It's essentially a 2-seat supercar from Croatia. And it's going to be the race director's car for Formula E this year. So Rimac is essentially giving Formula E one of their cars for a year to be used at the Formula E races. Wow, right?
This looks pretty... I think I had heard about this. This just came out a couple days ago, wasn't it?
Well, the Rimac 1's been around, for a couple of years now. But but the news of Formula E taking over, obviously, that came out in the middle of this. I think it was the end of last week, beginning of this. So it's going to be going to basically be used to go around the track, make sure the track's safe before a race. Obviously, it can be done at high speed, to mimic the Formula E race car. It'll also be used though to give some lucky people rides around the track. Now, a good friend of mine happens to be on the coverage, doing the coverage for the race, and is on part of the media team covering it. And I have a sneaky suspicion, before long he's going to get a ride in it. And if he does, Robert, I'm never going to talk to you again. Sorry. Simple as that, really. Moving on. Volvo. I love Volvo. They're one of my favourite car companies because they're just so earnest. Their engineers are so earnest and honest with me. They have confirmed, after several months of hinting, that the XC90, the 2015 XC90 crossover SUV, very popular in the States, 7-seat, big. Well, it's actually a mid-size. Over here, it's massive. It's a massive car, but in the States, it's kind of a mid-size crossover SUV. Going to be coming with various greener options, all 4 cylinders, but the top spec model is going to be a plug-in hybrid.
Fantastic.
And it's going to be called the Volvo XC90 T8, twin engine, as they like to call it. It's 2-litre, turbocharged, supercharged, 4-cylinder gasoline engine up front. 60 kilowatt electric motor in the rear. I'm assuming it's going to have a 12 to 16 kilowatt hour battery pack, although Volvo hasn't given any details of that yet. Completely redesigned inside. Interestingly, the center console is inspired by Tesla, so you've got that big kind of iPad-esque touchscreen monitor in the middle. It's going to have Apple AirPlay compatibility, Google Car compatibility. And Volvo hasn't talked about price yet, but it is coming to market soon. I think it's going to be a massive seller, Joe, don't you?
I would say so. And Volvo is a little, if I'm not mistaken, Volvo has really not been in the EV or hybrid game. They're kind of coming at this a little late, are they not?
Well,
Is that right?
they've had the C30 electric for a couple of years now, and
Okay,
Volvo doesn't
okay.
have the money. I mean, Volvo's now owned by Geely, which
Oh,
a
yes.
Chinese company which really does want to make EVs and is very kind of pro EV. But Volvo just hasn't had the money. I mean, I feel really sorry for Volvo. Volvo's history has read a little bit like the car company that's, you know, there's somebody at school that you were at school with, and they were a really nice person. They just always ended up in relationships that ended up going south
Yeah,
or sour.
yeah, yeah.
And Volvo's a bit like that. They had a relationship with GM, it didn't work out. They had a relationship with Ford, it didn't work out.
Didn't work out.
And some of Volvo's previous cars have got this kind of very kind of mishmash bits of technology from different car companies, and now Volvo's kind of, for the first time, and I reckon in about 20-30 years, got a really clear idea of what it wants to do, and it wants to have zero emissions by 2020. It wants to have plug-in hybrids across the board. It does the plug-in V60 plug-in hybrid in Europe, which is a very performance-oriented car. And I drove one last summer, a very nice car. Limited EV range, only about 25-30 miles of range, which is very disappointing for someone who drives an EV with a larger range.
Right.
And I think the XC90 is going to suffer that same problem unless Volvo makes the battery pack bigger. Of course, the challenge with that is that the XC90 is a big vehicle, and so it needs a lot of energy to push it along. But I'm hoping it's going to be that same through-the-road hybrid drivetrain, which was very sporty in the lighter, smaller V60 plug-in hybrid. And that's essentially what Volvo's been talking about. And I think selling it as a high-end premium model makes so much sense, because people... and I was talking about this this week. If you set a vehicle aside from others and you make it separate and distinct as an electric vehicle brand, then people come in and they go, I'm not going to buy that because it's an electric car. I want to stick with a model that I know. Whereas if you go, okay, these are the options for the drivetrain, and they're working through all the different options for the drivetrain, they've already decided they're going to buy a Ford, or they've already decided they're going to buy a Volvo, and they might have even decided I'm going to buy this particular model. You don't talk about drivetrains and specifications until you've already pretty much made your mind up that you're going to buy that car. So At that point, if the salesman goes, so your XC90, the one you want there, you could have the diesel engine, which is going to give you this much power and will save you, and have this as your efficiency. You can have the petrol version, which will do this, or you can have the really super ultra efficient one. It's the top of the range model, and oh, by the way, it comes with all these extra features that the low end models don't. At that point, people go, okay, maybe it's 5,000 or 10,000 more, but I'm getting the car I want, and I'm getting these extra features. I don't mind paying extra for the privilege. And once they've got into that, once they've got into that idea of it being a bonus feature to the car they'd already decided to buy, it's why the plug-in Prius is proving so popular, because there's no other reason that the plug-in Prius is proving popular other than
and people
like
already know the
it,
Prius,
and they go with they get talked up. That extra couple of grand that pushes them up into the plug-in variety is something that they can commit to doing because they've already committed to paying for the car.
That was Toyota's strategy, even though they haven't kind of finished. They said they were going to be done with their entire lineup like a couple of years ago, and that never happened. Toyota's strategy was like, we're going to roll the Prius out, then we're going to roll the hybrid synergy drive technology out to every model in the entire Toyota and Lexus lineup in 5 years, and that never happened. But again, it was smart because you can still buy a Camry that is the hybrid, and you can buy, I forget which other models they have. They just haven't introduced it across the whole line yet. But that would be the smart way to do it, because people get attached to a certain car and a certain model or a certain maker. I think Volvo over here, I don't see them all that often. Volvo is definitely looked at, I believe, as a more of a luxury car maker. People really associate it with Europe.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it's definitely that way in the States. So I don't see that many of them.
I like them. I think they've got that very luxurious feel.
They do, and Volvo's been around for a long time. I remember the old the old commercials in the 80s and 90s. It was like Volvo drive safely, and they, they were super boxy, and now they're much more sexy.
I think back then Volvo was kind of the safe car. That's the only reason why you bought a Volvo, because it was safe and it was big. And disclaimer, huge, I used to own a Volvo 240, which I bought, I think, for £200, and I sold it for £200.
Wow.
It was a great little car. It didn't have great gas mileage, but it was a great, fun, practical little car. And somewhere in the back of my head, there was that little box that I ticked in my head when I bought a Volvo, because it was kind of the stereotypical thing for someone with my lifestyle choice to do. Had the cats, had the kids, had the dogs, got the Volvo, tick. And I think a lot of people do go through that period of their life when there is no other vehicle that makes sense other than a Volvo. As a teenager, maybe as a student, they want to carry stuff to uni and back again. And then later on in life, when they want the luxury, they go back to Volvo for the luxury brand. I don't think everybody will, but I think that's how Volvo's going to market itself. And there's an awful lot of Gen X's and Gen Y's who remember those tatty old Volvos that were hilarious to drive.
Yeah.
I mean, you learned so much about driving a proper car in a Volvo with a rear-wheel drive. Skidding and driving on ice and having all sorts of fun in a safe way, because they weren't that powerful. Certainly not mine. But who would entertain the brand again if it came out with a high-performance plug-in? And I think that's what Volvo is going to do. All right, moving on. Daimler and BMW this week have announced a partnership with wireless charging, and wireless charging on a fairly large scale. From what I can tell, Daimler and BMW want to kind of set the standard for wireless charging in Europe. They want to be in part of this land grab process, because let's face it, they didn't with charging. CCS, combined charge standard, is only really just hitting the market in Europe and only really just hitting the market in the US. Compared to CHAdeMO quick charging, there are nowhere near as many charging stations. And I think BMW and Daimler and also Volkswagen as well are struggling a little bit, because they're selling these cars and there's not as many charging stations that can use them as Nissans can use the CHAdeMOs. And I suspect BMW and Daimler kind of got together and went, look, we know wireless charging is a big future technology. We want to nail it down now. We want to be on that first wave this time. And so they've announced a partnership. They're going to work together. BMW has already demonstrated wireless charging with an Active E, an i3 and an i8. It's only 3.3 kilowatts or 3.6 kilowatts at the moment. It will eventually go up to 7 kilowatts. But I'm not feeling the wireless charging love. Now, Joe, you're a geek like me. You're into your tech. Come on, tell me what it's about.
I have an iPhone 5S, and it does, there are options. You can get a case for wireless charging. I just don't really see the purpose. I can just dock it in or plug it in, and it's not that big of a deal. I think for cars, I think we could see that going forward, but there are so many the whole EV industry is almost like sort of in Samsung mode right now, where every idea is being thrown out there. Wireless charging and the fast charging and all these different options and charging technologies are out there, and it's going to take some time to shake out. The other problem I have, and I don't know the answer to this, is wireless charging basically is inductive charging. That technology and that science is a real thing, and it's fairly basic, but how they implement it I hope does not become sort of incompatible. I hope we don't have multiple different types of wireless charging technologies that, one brand, BMW is not going to be compatible with a wireless charger that was meant for Nissan or something like that. That's my concern with that. The other thing is one of the big technologies that was making a lot of headlines recently over here in the States called solar roadways, which raised some huge amount of money on Indiegogo. Their technology for replacing asphalt with these solar panel multi-technology panels also would include wireless charging. So my question is, are these guys talking to them? Like, before we implement yet another type of charging technology, let's get it right. Let's have a standard across the board, not all these separate little
And that's the challenge, isn't it? And there are lots of people who are very, very skeptical of solar roadways. I'm going to keep my personal opinions on the fence on this one.
Yeah, we'll go around it. Yeah, but anyways.
Because there are some challenges to that particular technology, namely the weight of some of these 18-wheelers. and some of the impacts.
Although they
and
said they've gotten around that, but anyways,
Yeah, so we'll
can
see.
do your research.
But I think it'll be interesting to see what the wireless charging that BMW and Daimler come up with. But I just don't see it catching on yet, and I don't see it as a value add feature.
I don't, unless it was built, whether it was through a solar roadways thing or through just, I've heard people wanting to put them into regular asphalt roadways. But again, that's a massive effort to try to overlay that across every road surface.
And you've also got to rely on this technology to be, what's the average life of blacktop? It's 20 years? Yeah. It's got to work for 20 years.
That's right. And I don't see it as that important for you pull into your driveway and it charges wirelessly. Was it that difficult to take the plug and plug it in? Did that take so much effort? I mean, it kind of cracks me up, really, honestly. It's like, it seems silly. It's a first world problem, obviously. So
Yes.
I don't know that it's that important. I don't go to I don't pull into a charging station at a mall and go, I really wish I didn't have to just plug it in.
Yeah. Well, I don't.
Yeah.
I do it instinctively now. But then I've been driving EVs for 6-7 years. So, before we move on to the next story of the segment, I'd just like to invite those who are watching live on YouTube, if you want to take part in the chat, and you're feeling a bit lonely, because I know that there are probably about 5 or 6 times the number of people watching on YouTube than there are actually in the chat room right now. So, if you want to take part in the chat and join in, what you can do is point your browser at www.transportevolved.com/live, which is that URL just there. And you can join in the chat room there. If you've got an ICQ client, then you can also join in there. But also you can tweet us at TransportEvolve on Twitter or use the hashtag TransportEvolved. Penultimate story of this segment. B-Class electric drive from Mercedes-Benz, given the EPA figures this week. It's got a much larger battery pack than either the Nissan LEAF or the BMW i3. As a consequence, it does go a little bit further. Not much. 87 miles per charge, which is not much more than the Nissan LEAF. And not much more than the BMW i3. But the interesting thing is its efficiency is terrible. It's 84 miles per gallon equivalent, which is less than that of the Tesla Model S, on which shares the same drivetrain and, obviously ancestry with the B-Class, because the B-Class features a Tesla-built drivetrain and battery pack. So,
how did they manage to do that?
Well, it's a big car. It was originally designed as a gasoline car. So going back to what I was saying earlier, you can't have an as efficient car if it was originally designed for one purpose and then kind of you shoehorn the drivetrain and whatnot in. However, because there's only about $100 difference between the i3 and the B-Class electric drive, I think the B-Class electric drive really is going to get some traction. Because a lot of people don't like the i3. They don't like its quirky design. They don't like its unusual shape. I'm kind of among those. I don't like its driving experience all that much. I would much rather drive a more conventional looking car. And the B-Class has a bigger trunk. It doesn't have the little front trunk that the i3 has, but it has a bigger trunk. It looks more conventional. It carries 5 people, not 4. It will go further per charge. The only downside is that you end up paying more per mile. So the i3's battery pack is far smaller than that of the B-Class electric drive, and instead of getting your 5+ miles per kilowatt hour, I reckon you're going to be getting 3 or 4 in the B-Class. I haven't looked at the figures, so that's just my wild guessings there. But it's got to be somewhere like that. Someone in the chat room can do the maths quickly for me, I'm sure. But it is not very efficient. So
it's not a bad-looking vehicle, I would say, but if it's not as efficient, then that just seems, I don't know.
Well, it depends. I mean, at the moment, electricity's cheap. What are you paying per kilowatt hour, Joe?
You
don't even know. That's how cheap it is, right?
It's like 10 or 11 cents.
Right.
I mean,
so EV drivers don't know how much they're paying per kilowatt hour. I think I'm going to stand out there and go, I bet.
And most of my charging is commercial. So it's
most
$1 an hour,
EV owners don't know how much their electricity costs them. If you ask a petrol car driver or a diesel car driver how much their car costs, they know to the nearest penny how much it's costing them. And so at the moment, the BMW i3 and versus the versus the Mercedes-Benz B-Class electric drive is not going to make much difference. It might be a couple of bucks here and there, depending on how much you drive. But as soon as electricity does start to go up, and believe me, it will,
Yep.
that's when you're going to start noticing it. So it depends how long you want to keep your car, and what your local utility prices electricity at, and perhaps if you work off the grid or not. If you create your own electricity,
it's free
from the sun, you really don't have to worry whether your B-Class
You could have the least efficient vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it wouldn't matter.
So I just wanted to point that out so people kind of had a bit of a thought about that.
I had read, this is not really completely related, and I won't go into it, but I had read an article, this was probably 6+ months ago, that people were actually looking into creating much more efficient actual electric motors, because that's something that may have been sort of overlooked. Everyone's tried to create larger battery packs and whatnot, and they were claiming some ridiculous efficiency gains, which may not be real, but to me that it made sense. Perhaps we don't have to continue increasing the size and density of battery packs if we actually make the primary user of that electricity, the motor, far more efficient. But there may be only so much efficiency that can be wrung out of electric motors. So
right.
I saw that 6 months ago. I never saw an update to it, so it may be a dead story.
Maybe. I hadn't thought about that, actually. I know that they're trying to make them more efficient so they don't use rare earth metals.
Right.
I know that was part
too,
of
because we only have they're rare
So
earth metals. We only have so much of them.
Although rare earth metals are not actually all that rare, as I understand it.
I read that too.
They're just so evenly distributed across the planet that mining them is really difficult. So if I dug a hole in my garden, I'd probably find some rare earth metal. The problem is I'd have to sift massive tons of soil to get it. And finding it in one place in large enough deposits to mine it, that's the tough bit.
They've been trying to open plants here to compete with China on that, I think.
Yeah. Afghanistan has lots of rare earth metals. That's all I'm going to say. Interesting, isn't it?
Interesting.
Nissan's No Charge to Charge program finally kicked off this week. Which means that if you own a Nissan LEAF, you can wander down to your Nissan LEAF dealer if you're in the States and in one of the following 10 key market areas. I can't remember. I'm going to have to load the story. It was...
Was it in Phoenix? Because I was 16 months too early.
I think it's retroactive. I think you can do it retroactively. I'm just going to check.
You're kidding, really?
San Francisco, Sacramento, San Diego, Seattle, Portland, Nashville, Phoenix, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, and Washington, D.C. It doesn't say new LEAF owners. It just says free for 2 years. It might be new LEAF owners. But you essentially go in and they give you an Easy Charge card, which is a specially designed card. You can have Easy Charge cards and not be part of the No Charge to Charge program. And the other thing is,
it must work with all the different charging companies.
Yeah, and it's kind of interoperability between all the charging companies. So the multiple different charging stations that you can use it with. Interestingly, though, some of the stations that the Easy Charge card will work with are not free. You have to pay, which is a bit of a
that's stupid.
We caught you out. 10 markets will be rolled out into 15 or more later on this year, and the idea is basically anywhere you publicly charge is free. So that would sort you out, wouldn't it, Joe?
That would be great. I mean, granted, I honestly pay $20 or less in charging per month, and that's completely on commercial charging. And I have found, and I won't reveal the locations just because I don't want to give things up, but I have found occasionally that in the Blink network that some of these, since they're so far behind, there are certain Blink stations that don't charge you per hour, so it's free. And I generally go back to those stations, so I'm trying to save $1 everywhere I can. But yeah, for me, it wouldn't make a huge amount of difference in terms of cost.
Okay,
but it would be cool.
It would be very cool. Just apparently, a couple of people in the chat room said it's not retroactive, so wouldn't work with you anyway. Shucks. All right, it's time for another ad break, and if you're watching at home, you will see that I have a little window down here. I don't think I can actually get it up on the screen because this machine's misbehaving. But have you tried our Transport Evolved shop before? It's where you can get all kinds of Transport Evolved swag. We've got cups, we've got badges, water bottles. We've got this really cute onesie that says "I'm the future of Transport Evolved," which is brilliant Women's t-shirts, men's t-shirts. You can have your varsity jackets, anything. And people have actually already started to buy Transport Evolved swag. I've had a couple of photos this week from people who are wearing it and wearing it to spread the word about Transport Evolved. If you go to transportevolved.com and then follow the link to the shop, you can buy your own very own branded Transport Evolved apparel or cup or whatever. And by buying those things, we are getting a little bit of commission. It is a little bit of commission, but it does help us run the site, keep things running and the lights on. But it also helps spread the word about Transport Evolved. So if you have a Transport Evolved cup and you took it to the office, you'd have lots of people asking about the website and what it is and what it means. And then we get more viewers and more listeners, and that's good for us too. So head to www.transportevolved.com/shop and take part and help us out. And thank you to the half dozen or so people this week who've already made purchases and sent me videos and photographs of them wearing stuff. Of course, it has to be good photographs. Don't send me any naughty ones. Thank you. So on to the final segment. How clean is your car, Joe? Living in Phoenix, I'm guessing not very, because you get big sandstorms, don't you?
Yeah, but between about July and August, I usually don't bother cleaning it because every other day there's a monsoon.
Right. So
if it's just dusty, I'll dust it off. But
explain Phoenix weather to people, because in Britain, people go, it's a desert, isn't it? And then they don't really kind of get the rest.
It is a desert, and for most of the year, we only get, I think, about 8 inches of rain per year. And most of the year, there are, 300 plus days of sunshine here. The hottest months definitely get in through, once you get into May, you can say goodbye to any rain for quite a long time. But the monsoon is this seasonal change. I think the Wikipedia definition would be a seasonal change in the wind direction. So what happens is we get the moisture flow down that's coming up from Mexico and from this further southwest. So we get these storms, and the moisture comes up to the desert. It reacts with, basically you have a weather system that's created because of the interaction with the hot desert climate and the moisture and the clouds coming off the mountains, and you have monsoons, and those are massive dust storms, and then hopefully they turn into rain, so that then the problem is with your car, you get the massive dust storm that comes through, and then you get a little bit of rain. And so it doesn't really wash your car. It just kind of makes a muddy, sort of dusty mess. But so we get some really good storms, and you see a lot of people posting pictures of the Haboob in July and August, and that's the big dust cloud coming over the metro area. And then it dies down in September, and then just goes back to being hot.
So you need a car that can clean itself, essentially, at this
Absolutely,
time of year.
yes.
And so Nissan has come out with a self-cleaning car. It's a Nissan LEAF. It's painted in a special hydrophilic and oleophilic paint. And I had to look that word up. It means oil resistant. So
right,
hydrophilic,
like your smartphone
water resistant
screens are.
And oleophilic.
But there are plenty fingerprints on here, so I don't know if that works too well.
And the idea behind the paint is that it just kind of repels everything. And Nissan Technical Centre Europe has been testing it in the UK, and they're talking about offering it as a future upgrade to your Leaf, like a special edition or a special option box that you tick for huge amount of extra money. I saw a video on this
like a month ago, and it looked, if it was legit, then it looked pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, your video's back. It died and then it came back again. So that's good.
Okay.
All right.
I didn't do anything.
Hackers unite. So, white hats, black hats, all unite. SciScan 360 this coming week in China. I believe it's in Beijing. It's a big security conference, one of the biggest in China, one of the biggest in the world, in fact, where computer software and hardware engineers meet along with hackers to discuss security implementation of generally computer software, computer hardware and gadgets. And normally at these conventions, very commonly, they will have a prize, a competition where they will try and encourage people to hack into a particular computer or software or device. In the past, we've seen them in the US where, very often they go on, here are 3 laptops. They'll put a Chromebook, a MacBook Pro or something else, a Windows machine. if you can hack into this machine, the first person to hack into this machine and do X, Y, and Z gets to win the machine. And it's not designed for hackers to prove how good they are. It's designed to actually help expose security flaws to help make things safer for everybody else. So if some of the best hacking minds in the world can get into a computer, it means other people can do it too. And so very often software companies will actually put up bounties even on their websites. If you hack into our system and you can prove it and you tell us about it, we'll give you a bounty. This year at the SciScan 360 conference, the Tesla Model S is the challenge. Hack a Tesla Model S and earn $10,000 in prize funds. Now, interestingly, Tesla is not condoning this. Tesla's not supporting this in any way, shape or form, despite China being one of Tesla's biggest markets, which makes me wonder if Tesla's happy about it even.
Maybe there's a vulnerability that they're not
Tesla
telling anyone
about. But this is a competition which is going to take place next week, and this time next week or soon after, we will know how safe the Tesla Model S and its internet-connected software really is. And that's quite scary because obviously the Tesla Model S, remotely updatable over the Wi-Fi. You know, Tesla can send software updates to the car over Wi-Fi or over 3G, or 4G. You can control your car. You can unlock the doors. You can check on the state of charge and do all these other things. Through the internet, remotely. And the question is, can hackers get in a back door and gain control over this car? Now, the competition could result in anything from a car being able to be driven by itself, which is unlikely, to things like being able to unlock the doors or maybe turn the alarm off or maybe display a particular web page. Now, we already know from previous stories that the Model S runs effectively a version of Ubuntu, special kind of version of Ubuntu embedded. We also know that people have successfully managed to hack the touchscreen display, the 17-inch touchscreen display, and turn it into essentially an external monitor. Someone earlier this year got into trouble when he physically connected his computer to his Tesla. He made a special adapter. Tesla noticed, and then they wrote to him and went or displayed a message going, "Please stop, or you will be in trouble." What do you think is going to happen this time, Joe?
I'm curious to see. I mean, Tesla is kind of like a black box. You know, no one really knows quite what the real technology in a Tesla Model S or the Roadster before it, really what is actually in it, and is it hackable? And these are questions that are going to come up more and more as we move forward. Think about if we were all in Google self-driving cars, like it's 35 years from now when that technology finally gets put out there. These are massive questions. I mean, you think about all the hacking stories and the don't forget to change your password type stories that you hear in the news all the time. Heartbleed was out 2-3 months ago. That was a huge thing that's still affecting secure sites on the internet. This is not going away. And I think ultimately you have to sort of remove the enticement for hackers. Not these. I mean, these are actually doing a good thing by trying to find these vulnerabilities before anyone else does. But ultimately, it's you have to sort of remove the honeypot of why people want to hack into these cars and potentially cause damage. Usually, people are hacking for information, and I don't know how much personal information a Tesla is going to hold about you, but it could link you back to their database, and then people could then steal your identity, or who knows what. And connecting all these devices, it's like the Internet of Things. Now it's the Internet of Things in your car.
Yes, and there is some question as to how that Tesla was stolen from the service center, the one that crashed and tragically killed the driver. Is how did that car get stolen? Did they have the keys? Did they get in some other way? And it's something we don't know the answer to yet. I think it's going to be a very interesting thing to watch. I'm going to be watching it with great interest. If you are into security, worth listening to Security Now by Steve Gibson. It's part of the Twit network.
Fantastic. Yes, fantastic and Twit network is fantastic. Yes. Do Teslas have built-in GPS by default?
They do. They do.
They do. Yeah. So, I mean, there's another issue. People could be tracking you.
Yeah. And of course, it was a vulnerability with the Leaf in the early days. You know, if you sent your Leaf to a specific website, because the Leaf can read RSS feeds, and there was
That's right.
a thing where the RSS feed reader was given the Leaf's location and speed by the car as part of that data dump. That's now been fixed, but
But yeah,
it's the kind of things that people don't think about. And all it takes is one clever person to figure it out, and then it's a bit like cows in a hedge. And I know that sounds strange. When I grew up on a farm, we always used to say that if there was a hole in a hedge and a cow found it, they kind of went, "There's a hole in the hedge," and they'd bellow and holler, and the rest of the herd would follow them. Some other animals just kind of go, "Oh, there's a hole in the hedge. I don't want to go through the hedge. I'm just going to stand here and eat the grass." Sheep do that a bit more, but cows, no. One finds a hole in the hedge, they're all gone. And hackers are a bit like that. Hole in the hedge, they're all there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. Mitsubishi's Outlander plug-in hybrid. Very competent car. I've driven one in the UK. I had one for a week. I'm still working on the review, and I want to just let you know that I haven't forgotten about it. However, I am the only person generally writing at Transport Evolved these days because Mark's on his extended sabbatical, and that means I just don't have the time to do all the video editing and all of the article writing, so I have to pick and choose. However, very good car. It's coming to the US next year as a 2016 model year, but says Mitsubishi North America, it's going to be completely changed for the North American market. It's going to be part of essentially a bit of a refresh to the car, and it's going to be tweaked to make it more refined. It's going to be tweaked to make its battery management system comply with Californian Air Resource Board regulations, and it's also going to be more appealing to US buyers. What do you think is going to happen to it, Joe?
I am not 100% sure. The only thing, and someone was telling me about this, that Mitsubishi, and I read this story because I saw it the other day, that Mitsubishi has never been a very popular brand out here for various reasons. And I think it's so strange to me. And please tell me that Mitsubishi is part of, I guess, I'm trying to think, Outlander is, actually, well, I guess it is the Outlander. I keep thinking the Outback, and that's by the other car maker. I don't know what's going to happen with this. I'm sorry.
I think it's going to be interesting to see just how much Mitsubishi can. It's not a big brand in the States.
It's not.
But Mitsubishi is moving towards SUVs, and it's very special about. It's very kind of keen to do that for the reason of we want to have more custom, and we want to go to SUVs. I would like to see a 7-seat variant of the Outlander. I think it could be possible. It's available without a plug-in hybrid drivetrain as a 7-seater. With a plug-in hybrid, it's only available as a 5-seater because the battery pack and some of the other power... the battery pack's underneath the floor, but the inverter for the rear motor and a few other things live where the 6th and 7th seats would be. So I'd like to see that. I would like to see less of the Prius phenomenon when you floor it, because in that car, in the Volt, if you absolutely floor it and there's room in the battery pack and there's enough power, you can accelerate up to beyond legal speed in a Volt without the engine ever turning on. In the Outlander plug-in hybrid, you can accelerate smoothly and carefully to 60-70 miles an hour and run at 60-70 miles an hour in electric mode without any problems. But if you do a stoplight dash, the engine comes on just like that.
It's on.
Yeah, and that really bugged me because there was a couple of times when I needed to overtake someone in a hurry, put my foot down and I heard the engine spin up. And it was only for 10 seconds and then turn back off again because I'd reached the speed. But I just don't want it to turn on and off all the time, which did bug me a bit. Be interesting to see. All right, GM. Bless GM. It's Cadillac ELR. Last time I checked, there were over 700 days worth of Cadillac ELRs in inventory. The norm for the industry is 30 to 60 days worth of supply, and 60 is on the high end. Normally 30 is considered ideal. Cadillac ELR has not been selling, partly because of an image problem, partly because of the price, $76,000 there, give or take a few, and also because it's essentially a Volt dressed up, a Chevy Volt, which is a 30 grand car, turned into an expensive luxury car. It's got the same drivetrain, same battery pack. It's not got a great 0 to 60 time. It's not Cadillac territory for 0 to 60. It's a bit slow. And it's just not been shifting off the dealer lots. Now, earlier this year, GM went round to Caddy dealers and went, look, we'll pay you $5,000 if you turn one of your ELRs on your lot into an official demonstration car and you get people test driving it. They were also giving $3,000, up to $3,000 incentives to try and get people behind the wheel. But now dealers all over the country seem to be offering up to $13,600 in discounts off MSRP for anyone willing to get behind the wheel of a Cadillac ELR. And what's more, that's before federal and state tax incentives. The ELR's in big trouble, isn't it?
It's a mess. And, people will send me hate mail, but I don't like a lot of the newer designs that Cadillac has gone with. And they're going after a certain market, and that market loves the design. The front end design of this car is ugly, I think. And it obviously, it's not selling. It's a repackaged Volt, and no one wants it. So the question is, what's sort of the pain point? What's the threshold where they lower it to some threshold, whether it's in the, after the government rebates, it's 50,000s or it's in the 40s. Is that where it's going to sell? Like you said, they have, 700 days of inventory? You wonder if eventually they're just going to have to claim defeat and say, we're just going to recycle the cars into something else. I mean, can they really sell them?
They need to sell them.
They do, yeah.
So it's going to be a case of how low they'll go, but I don't think we're going to see a 2016 or even a 2015 model.
No, I don't think. Why bother?
It's not going to happen. All right, Nikola Tesla. Happy birthday. It was your birthday yesterday. You were 158 years old, which is not bad, really. That's pretty good, right?
He's doing well.
He's doing well. Obviously,
no longer making cars now.
No longer with us. But that's the anniversary of his birth, 158 years ago yesterday. Obviously, the father of the AC motor, amongst other things, alternating current. He wanted to make wireless power free for everybody. He wanted electricity to be free for everybody. I mean, imagine what would have happened had he won that particular battle instead of Thomas Edison.
We'd be in a totally different world.
It would have been a completely different world today, wouldn't it? Anyway, so Matthew Inman, the creator of the Oatmeal comic a couple of years ago, he is a fan of Tesla. He's a fan of the modern day Tesla motors and a fan of Tesla the man. And he, alongside some friends, got together and started an Indiegogo campaign to preserve the land that was once the location of Nikola Tesla's workshop. And they decided they were going to restore what remained of Tesla's workshop there and build a museum, the first museum in the United States, believe it or not, devoted to Tesla. And they were very, very successful on Indiegogo. They got a lot of support from a lot of big names in the world. And at the time, Elon Musk said, well, we'll help you out. But earlier this week, he and Matthew Inman talked, and turns out that Elon Musk had a plan up his sleeve. He wants to donate superchargers to the Tesla Museum in New York, which I think is fantastic. I think it's in Syracuse in New York. Donate some Tesla superchargers, or rather build some Tesla superchargers in the parking lot of the Tesla Museum. But also, Elon Musk has donated $1 million of his own personal fortune to the museum. So that is a pretty freaking awesome birthday present.
It is a pretty awesome, and they raised 1.3 million on Indiegogo. So
yeah, so happy birthday, Nikola Tesla, and well done, Elon. That is the kind of cool thing we need more people like you doing in the world.
And Elon's been making some great moves lately. That people will debate what the actual result of this will be, but him wanting to sort of open up the patents, certain patents for the battery technology or the charging technology to other manufacturers. Whether what that will really result in, we don't know. But they're making some good moves.
Very good indeed.
Go Elon.
Well, that's it for today's show. Thank you for joining us, Joe. Tell us about your new channel on YouTube and your lights.
I have been I'll just make a real brief elevator pitch. I have been a home automation guy and lighting and energy efficient lighting. The light that's actually lighting me up right now is an LED light. But it's a huge topic these days. I converted completely to solid state LED lighting just over a year ago after many years of research and trying to find no compromise solutions. And there's many of them out there. So if you want to know more about the efficiency, lighting efficiency market, LED lights, all the new stuff, and really cool stuff with home automation and how you can improve your light through wonderful light. You can go to the website answers.lighting. There is no .com. That's in one of those new domain names. Or you can find me on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, one of those, and you'll find all the episodes. I've made 4 so far. I'm going to be continuing with the episodes. Apple has released their home kit specifications, so that's going to be huge in a few months. So it's really fun. It allows me to take my my interests and put it out there. So check it out.
So you're going to turn it into a podcast as well, so we can subscribe to it.
It's a YouTube, yeah. I don't know if it'll be a full podcast, but it's episodes on YouTube for sure, and there's a blog. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
And,
thank you for having me on again.
No, it's been great to have you. I was going to ask you, have you been playing with the Ninja blocks?
No.
So I have a Ninja block running on a Raspberry Pi, and I think that's great. And I use that to remotely turn the television on and off from wherever I am in the world.
Way cool.
And they're coming out with the Ninja Sphere, which is kind of like this home automation device that you talk to, and it knows where you are in the house. So as you walk around, it can sense who you are, and it's very weird, but very cool as well.
There's so much cool stuff coming out.
It is, and I think EVs and self-driving cars and autonomous technology fits so well into that, doesn't it? Really does.
Totally.
Really does. That really is it for today's show. Thanks to Joe for joining us. Thanks to you for joining us at home. Thanks to everyone who's been watching on YouTube. Lots of people watching today. Very nice. And everyone taking part in the chat room as well. We'll be back next week. As I say, usual time of between 5 p.m. British summertime and 7 p.m. British summertime. I'm sorry it's a bit vague, but as I said at the top of the show, everyone in America is on holiday. Everyone. And so depending on the person I get and whereabouts in the US they are, with its multiple time zones, then sometimes I have to shift the show around to accommodate my guests, and sometimes, being a mum, I have to shift things around to accommodate my kids as well. So I hope you'll forgive me. Do check us out on YouTube, www.youtube.com/Transport Evolved, if you've not seen us before. I uploaded a new TEN today, which is our Transport Evolved news show. Essentially what we've talked about here, but in 10 minutes. So it's a roundup of the news. This show is kind of the companion to that, where we kind of gaggle on for about 90 minutes on those stories, riff on them. But if you want your news in a more bite-sized form, do try 10 out, TEN, and you can find that on YouTube. It's also available as a podcast, and I know there's lots of people now subscribing to that, so yay. And also today, as a bit of a bonus, I uploaded a How I Do It video, because a lot of people think that Transport Evolved is some massive network and we've got loads of people working for us and loads of people behind the scenes doing videos. We are not like the Twit network. No, we are not. Mr. Leo Laporte, he does have lots of very skilled, very talented people helping him with his network, but it is just me right now, just me and a set of buttons. Look, that's my buttons there, and the cameras and all of the equipment, and I run it myself. The same with the TEN. We don't have a set. We build up the set every Friday. We add everything and we do it bit by bit by bit, and my edit suite is my local Starbucks. So if you want to see how we do it, go to youtube.com and you can follow the links. Look for Transport Evolved and you'll see the How We Do It show. Also, www.transportevolved.com. Every day, lots of news stories and reviews. And if you'd like to write for us, do get in contact, because we're looking for some new people, some new faces to join the family. That really is it though, folks. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to plug in. See you soon. Take care. Bye.